Tammy, and welcome each of you to this beautiful hour, hour and a half, depending upon how the Spirit drives us into the future. You know, I'm Barbara Muller, and hearing this music has brought tears to my eyes because Robert loved music. Today, we are here to celebrate Robert. And when we were celebrating Prophet, the hat maker's son, and we finished our 11 weeks, our harp player, Tammy, said, what was it like to be in the room when Douglas Gillies, the author of Prophet, was asking Robert, and why did you do that? And why were you a peacemaker? When he asked those hard questions, Douglas Gillies, a trained lawyer used to being in court, would ask Robert the same questions as if he were on trial. Why did you do that? What was it that motivated you? And as he finished those questions, Douglas would record it. And after 2 hours, he would take everything home and type it up. And then he would bring it back the next week. And he would ask Robert, am I correct? And Robert and he would edit. So this book, Prophet, the hat maker's son, which we finished 11 chapters together. And I'm going to ask you just to mute because I want to make sure we get every word here. But when we were done, Tammy said, and what was it like? Just like Douglas would have said to Robert, well, what were you doing? Why did you decide to be a peacemaker when your dad said that there's no profit in being a peacemaker? And he said, I don't care. I am never going to let a mother, and this is a young boy, I'm never going to let a mother's son shoot another mother's son. And the story goes on when he was in high school, and he found out that every classmate he had in the 12th grade were no longer on the planet. And he would walk down the street, and mothers would say, why are you still alive? When my son was shot in the name of peace, and it didn't bring peace. We're still in war. And he would say, I am so sorry. I am so devastated that all my classmates are no longer here. And I will work for peace. I will work for peace in a way that will bring harmony and joy to all mothers to know that their children will never go to war. And that was his vision. And I tell you that story because his vision drove him. His vision made him strong. His vision for peace and that he was going to be a peacemaker allowed him to never give up. And today, as I talk about Robert Muller and my life together, I'm going to give you some of the tidbits that made me so strong. I too had a vision when I was a little girl. My grandfather came from Hungary to avoid the war. And he said to me when I was 3 years old, you know, someday you're going to be a peacemaker. And I said, oh, yeah, I'm 3 years old. What am I going to do? I don't even know what that is. And he said, you'll find out. And that's why I'm here, my dear granddaughter, Barbara, because I avoided the war that was coming to Hungary when the coffin maker was piling up the coffins in my hometown next to my parents' meat market. I said, what are you doing that for? We're going to need them. The war's coming. My grandfather said, war is not for me. Leaving his family, his meat market, his profit that he was making from all the stores his family owned, he took a $5 bill and got on the next boat to the United States. History was made that decision time. My grandmother took the same boat. My grandmother got on that boat because she was not happy. Her middle name is the name of a king. She was a descendant of a king, but did that matter? She too didn't want to be in the war. So that her mom and she met my grandfather on the boat. And when they got to Ellis Island, they exchanged information and got married. I almost am in tears because I think of all of the coincidences that brought us here today. What brought us here today? Why were we given this opportunity to live our lives when so many people are no longer here? And it's on whose shoulders we stand. And I'm going to read something that is so beautiful. And it was found as Joyce and I put together our Peace Community magazine. The lights of the stars that were extinguished years and ages ago still reach us. So is the great man or woman who died long ago, but still reach us with the brilliance of their ideas and the radiance of their personalities. The radiance of their personalities. That was written by the same fellow who wrote The Prophet, the one that now is out in 20,000 languages and all over the world. Gibran is his name, Gibran. He wrote the original Prophet, and we found that. This magazine that you're getting in your mail, I have sent all of you a copy, and if you don't get it, you email me immediately and I'll send it to you. Was a gift by Joyce Wyckoff, who sat with me, and we uncovered from hundreds of boxes of Robert's archives the stories that help you understand who he was. He had a few characteristics besides being passionate and a visionary. He worked every single morning in the wee hours of the morning. He'd wake up at 3:30 and start working. He always said, find your best time to do your work, and that's when you become at your best, and that's when you write. And so that's another little admission. I too am a morning person. If you're going to find a mate, find somebody who's in harmony with the best time of the day to work, because Robert and I would work together, but he would work on what he was working on, and I would work on what I was working on. And so with that, we were able to bring together the joy of being together in one life and in our marriage. As I wrote in the poem, Decide to Be Married. Find those things that attract you to each other. 1994, Robert and I were at a conference called the Invitational. And it was a conference where we were able to explore the meaning of life and the meaning of death. When we invited Robert to that conference, he wrote on the invitation letter, I will attend with enthusiasm. And I also am enthusiastic. And so I thought, well, anybody that would write didn't even send a note about, I'm the chancellor of the University for Peace in Costa Rica. I spent 40 years at the United Nations, and I believe in peace. He didn't put any of that. He just said, I will attend with enthusiasm. And I was told by many people that I too am enthusiastic. And I thought, anybody who's enthusiastic is my kind of man. Now, at this time, I was single, and I had served on the board of La Casa for over 25 years. Remember what I said about vision? My vision was that we would have a spiritual world, a world where you could have peace and harmony. And La Casa de Maria by the IHM nuns. And I love those nuns. Why? Because they told the Pope, you're wrong. Women should be preachers. And they disbanded from the Pope. And they're the Immaculate Heart nuns, independent, brilliant. And I loved their philosophy that peace begins where your heart is. Even when everything is taken away from you. And I can tell you stories about everything being taken away from you. When Robert Muller said to me in a car where I was driving him around Santa Barbara, California, I love you. And I knew if I said I loved you back, my life would change. Was I ready to do that? In 3 seconds, I said, I love you. And we held hands for the next 17 years. But I knew my vision for peace that my grandfather told me at 3 was now going to materialize, because here was the best peacemaker on the planet. Now, I didn't know who Robert was when he said, I will attend with enthusiasm, but I started a Google search. And what do you think I found? He was the most quoted man on Google. And I thought, is it possible that one man could be the most, and I didn't even know what Google was, John. McConnell told me, John McConnell is the original founder of the Earth Day. John McConnell was the man who went to the United Nations, and he said to Robert, we have to have an Earth Day. We have to have an Earth Day, Robert. And Robert said, oh, I'll help you. Robert always said, I'll help you. If anybody came to him with an idea, he would say, I'll help you. Long story short, Robert said, we got to get Margaret Mead, you know. She needs to support us, and she needs to write a letter to everybody that she knows, and we'll send that letter to all the ambassadors, and we'll have the first Earth Day. And that's who told me that Robert was the most quoted man on Google, because he was an expert on the computer in the ripe old age of 90 that he was at that time. And, you know, Robert brought me a new way of life. He introduced me to the Eleanors, to the wonderful Jerry and Des. I wouldn't have met them without Robert. He opened up the world of leaders. In the first few months of our marriage, I started journaling. Well, I was always journaling, but these journals started to come alive. We were in Thanksgiving Square in Dallas, Texas. And I said, well, how did this happen? And Peter Stewart said, I went to the United Nations and I wanted to have a day of Thanksgiving. We wanted to celebrate Thanksgiving and gratitude. So I said to Robert, I want to create a Thanksgiving Square in the middle of the business district in Dallas, Texas, where all the money is being siphoned to the world. And Robert said, what a good idea. A temple for understanding and a place where people can go in gratitude. And so in the first few months of our marriage, we went to Texas. I think one of the second things about us is be open to the opportunities that come your way. I didn't start saying no after I met Robert. I started saying yes with enthusiasm. And if I couldn't do something, I would say no, I can't do that now, but let me think about it for the future. Anyway, we got in Thanksgiving Square, and Peter Stewart said, I would not have this temple of understanding if it wouldn't have been for Robert. He made a spiral up to the top of this tower in Thanksgiving Square with beautiful art glass windows, almost like a church. And you would walk up this spiral to the top, and there would be music and harmony. And that was just the tip of the iceberg of what I learned from Robert, that dreams do come true if you find somebody who believes as you do. And so here we were in Thanksgiving Square. And I realized then how many things Robert's words created. I was at a conference with Barbara Marx Hubbard. You may remember that name. And if you don't, go on Google and check it out. And Barbara Marx Hubbard said, you be careful now. If Robert Muller tells you to do something, you'll have to do it. It's like you don't have a choice. And I said, okay. I didn't know what else to say. And Barbara Marx Hubbard said, there are many, many things that Robert mentioned to me, and they are here in my heart, and I'll do them as I can. Think about this. Robert Muller made about 40 speeches a year, and that's probably the minimum. And I would accompany him on these speeches after we got married. And I would go with him to Japan, where they took his book, Most of All, They Taught Me Happiness, and translated into Japanese. I'm coming into the hotel at the New Hotani. There's a billboard with Robert Muller's picture on it in Japan. In Japanese, it says, Most of All, They Taught Me Happiness. Now, that Japanese connection was very powerful. This young man made sure Robert came, and we got to go to the sumo wrestlers. I don't know what you call it, stadium. And these big men would come out and get out there, and they would try to knock each other down and push each other around. And, you know, they gave all of the wonderful Japanese families a square the size of a desktop. And they all had to sit there as these sumo wrestlers pushed each other around. And then finally, they were done pushing each other around, and Robert took the stage, and I stood next to him. Robert played his harmonica, and of course he got a standing ovation, the ode to joy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stood up, and I didn't stand up because I was standing next to him, and I said, my heart is here because that's what connects us. It's our hearts. I got a standing ovation. I didn't have to finish my speech. I figured if they got Robert's harmonica and they knew our hearts were the way to think about the future, that was done. And then we go outside and we get there for the cherry blossoms. The cherry blossom season, again, everybody took the size of one cardboard box, opened it up and sat on it and enjoyed the cherry blossoms. So you see, with Robert, my life was expanded. I got to work for peace in many countries. The Brahma Kumaris, and Eleanor will be listening to this, opened up their castle in England, and we would sit there with the Brahma Kumaris, and I learned to meditate there. And meditation is a key to so much peace on the planet. And I know because Tammy does a meditation once a month, and we all get on and we meditate for a world that works for all. And I also want to tell you about another vision that I had, that the journals that Robert wrote daily would someday turn into books. And my son, David, went to our storage bin and pulled out 100 boxes of archival material that Robert brought to life, that I stored. And now the United Nations is ready to have that. Robert called us a cosmic couple. And I said one time, well, what do you mean by it? We're a cosmic couple. Well, he said the Mayans started that. It's a ceremony. The Mayans' cosmology is correct when they consider the couple and not just the individual to be the basic cosmic unit of evolution. They say that the couple is the evolution of our future. Now, I said to him, well, what about all those people who are single? You'll see they're couples with other people too. It's not just the couple that you are. It's the couple that you become as you share your experiences together. And I look around and see so many couples. And as I realized that Robert and I received many awards, we got from Frank Kelly in Santa Barbara, the speechwriter for Truman. What did he give us? The Glorious Beings Award. I'm a glorious being. Isn't that a beautiful thing to be a glorious being? And I give all of you the Glorious Being Awards because your being is so important today, more than you even realize. And Robert would say to everybody in the audience, it's you I'm counting on to create the world that we need today. It's you I'm counting on. Well, I was in Thanksgiving Square. I was in Japan. I was in India. I watched Robert speak, and often he was the keynoter, and I was the key ender. And I would tell people after he had spoken, don't expect to do all this in one day. Just think about what Robert said, and just think about the possibilities of implementing one of his ideas. Well, in 1994, ideas started to come alive. It was exactly 2,000 days to the year 2000 when I stood up in front of these world leaders at La Casa de Maria, and I said, as a PR person and also as a member of the La Casa Board of Directors, you know, there's 2,000 days to the year 2000. And if each of you writes one idea, just one, for the year 2000, I'll publish the book. Well, like a jack in the box, Robert jumps up and said, I'll do it. That began our relationship. In my mailbox in Santa Barbara came these beautiful envelopes, often with whiteout all over them, because he never bothered to have a computer. He used his typewriter, 2 fingers, and typed. And he would write these ideas, and he would send them to me in my mailbox. And I would open them up and give them to my secretary, who would type them. And then when Robert made it to Santa Barbara, we would look through these ideas and he would edit and finish them. It helps in the beginning of a relationship to be in 2 different countries. because you have archival letters, love letters that Robert wrote to me, poems that he read to me on my answering machine. You know, I had forgotten I had an answering machine when I was talking to one of my friends, and she said, "Oh, you mean your answering machine?" I said, "Yeah, every night when I'd come home from my public relations company, I'd turn on the answering machine and sit down and cry out of pure joy for the messages that Robert would leave me." And I knew that he was telling me in his own words how much he loved me and how much he appreciated it, that we were in a relationship. In this magazine, we have one page called Love Letters. And in those love letters, I will read you a couple from the magazine. And if you don't have your copy, just email me and I'll send you one. What will be the ending for people like us, Barbara? For both of us, we must think very hard and pray the focus of the universe for, and ask for the focus of the universe for our endings that will be meaningful and helpful to the world. Let us think of things which have been not done before, and give recorded messages from our tomb. Oh yeah, he wanted me to go over there, put a bench down and a little slot machine. I was supposed to let people put a quarter in it, and his voice would come up with an idea. And then he says, "I have a message from my passing to the living," and it's described on my tomb. He's right, I did describe it on his tomb. On his tomb, it says Robert Muller, 1923 to 2010. He spent his life working for peace. And I put his website, www.robertmuller.org. I knew I couldn't put a machine there. I couldn't even put a bench there. I asked the caretaker if I could put a bench. "Oh, no, if you put a bench, everybody's going to want to put a bench." "Well, this is a bench of dreams," I said. "This is a place where people can sit and go to robertmuller.org and read his 7,500 ideas and dreams for a better world. And they can implement one or two." Well, do you think that motivated him? Heck no. But pretty soon I went back to Robert's grave, which is just around the corner here, and I put flowers on his tomb. And I saw a bench. Now, I haven't had the courage to go put bench of dreams, but a bench of dreams is a very important part of Robert's life. In this magazine, we show you the bench of dreams we had at our home in Costa Rica, which was just up the hill from the University Para La Paz, the University for Peace. And so we lived in this humble cabin that had a bench of dreams, which was about 40 feet long, because the elder hostels would always come and visit us. And the elder hostels were people on vacation. They had saved up their money to go on trips, and they came to Costa Rica. And every tour guide brought the elder hostels up the hill, and they sat on our bench. And Robert would stand in front of them and say, "You know, you're retired now. This is when you should be refired, because now it's time for you to do what you were thinking when you were a little child, and you said, someday I'm going to do that. And someday is now." And these elder hostels would look at Robert. "Now? I dreamt that dream 45 years ago or 80 years ago." And he said, "Now." And he said it again. And so many people were able to do the next thing, which was, "Okay, now you've got your dream. I want you to bend over and pick up 2 stones. Hold one in each hand. Hold one in each hand. Now I want you to close your eyes and think the dream that you dreamt and see it coming to be, because it's time for your dreams to become real. Hold those stones and dream your dream. And when you see it actually being fulfilled, toss one stone into the earth so the earth will help you remember and help you give that dream some merit and help it happen. And the other stone, take it home and you keep it with you so you remember your dream." Robert and I used that bench of dreams when we lived in our rustic cabin. Every time Robert wrote a letter to a head of state, we traipsed up the side of the mountain and sat on the bench of dreams and held it. And we asked the universal spirit world to help implement this. If Robert felt he had to write a letter to Jimmy Carter, he sat down and wrote the letter to Jimmy Carter, never correcting any mistakes, but he had a bottle of white out. And if he made a mistake, he just whited it out and typed right over it. And I'll never forget Ted Turner coming to visit us in our little rustic cabin and saying, "Dr. Muller, why do you write me such long letters?" And Robert said, "Because I have a lot to say." And he said, "Well, if you wouldn't write me such long letters, I'd read them." And so Robert said, "Okay, just for you, I'm going to write short letters. And why don't you buy a lot of property here in Costa Rica so you too can have the love that I have for the land?" And he said, "I own a lot of parks. I own a lot of property. And I'm glad you own so much in Costa Rica," which I am proud to say we still have. And Robert had a dream that this was going to become the Robert Muller Peace Park. And we have never developed that land. It's owned by myself and his 4 children. And these ideas that Robert had, I had dreams at night sleeping. I was sleeping and I saw this little humble cabin, which was so rustic and so primitive. And it was I said, "This is going to be where Robert's archives are." Well, let me tell you what happened. Wonderful Avon Madison came to visit us in Santa Barbara. And she said, "Barbara, you can't put those archives in Costa Rica. The bugs will eat them." And I said, "You're right," because I had books that were half there because the bugs had eaten the other half. I said, "Okay." And she said, "It has to be in Santa Barbara or at the United Nations." So that's Avon Madison, founder of Pathways to Peace, who was a very, very important person to me, because when Robert fell in love with me and I fell in love with him, he had a circle of friends, the Lucille Greens of our planet, the people who were creating new entities to work with the United Nations. I wasn't part of that. And so up comes a moment when we come to the 50th anniversary. Maybe it was even before. All I remember is Avon Madison with long blonde hair and a smile as white as her little ears could go. And she said, Robert said, "This is the woman I'm in love with. This is the woman that I will spend the rest of my life with. She's my life partner, and we're married." And Avon said, "Welcome, sister." Those words are tattooed in my heart. And David Wick, who just appeared in front of us, was there. And David Wick, co-founder of the Pathways to Peace, they welcomed me. And here I am, Joni, all these years later, talking about the love I felt for Avon. When her mother died, what did she send me? A pair of earrings, because I'm the only person she knew who doesn't have pierced ears. I have probably 500 pairs of earrings because every time somebody's mother dies, they send me all their earrings. And I have a collection of their hearts, their spirit. I wear earrings every day of somebody from the past. Diane Ruth is on. She's joining us right now. Her mother sent me a plastic bag. She gave me a plastic bag of earrings from her mother. And every time I wear those earrings, I get the energy that her mother put in them. At these beautiful, Diane's mother was like the glamour queen. So when I want to get glamorous, I just put on her jewels. When my granddaughters were in vitro, Robert would go to San Juan Bautista with me, and he'd take out his harmonica and play the harmonica to my daughter's belly. Ode to joy to my daughter's belly. Believe me, when those girls were born, and I was in Trader Joe's, and I said in Trader Joe's, I'm going to cry. I said in Trader Joe's, my grandbabies are being born. They rang all the bells in Trader Joe's. So when you have something to experience, tell them and let them ring the bells. So my grandbabies, I said, Robert, I got to go. My grandbabies are being born. And here's a whole bunch of food. And my friend Nicoletta is going to come over and stay with you while I go help my daughter give birth to her babies. I got to the hospital. They were premature. They wouldn't let us take them home. Do you think I'm going to leave the hospital with my little babies in there? Heck no. I pulled up a chair. They gave me 2 warm blankets, and I stayed until those babies came home. They needed us. They needed us to be there. My daughter would hold one, and I'd hold one. And pretty soon it was Christmas. They were born early December. And Robert came up, and he put them in the little bassinet next to the dining table. And he started to play Ode to Joy. And I can remember those babies. Their eyes were so big, and my heart was so full because he knew the miracle of birth was here. And in this magazine, you'll see pictures. I don't think I can show them to you, but that's me and Robert at their baptism on the hill. And so he was part of their life. These little angels have not changed one bit. Look over there at Sandy's picture behind Sandy. That's the bench of dreams that the Franciscans came. We had 2 benches of dreams. We had the 40-foot bench that the elder Hustel sat on, and then this very rustic bench that the Franciscans sat on. The Franciscans came to visit Robert and myself all the time. I had the privilege of meeting the people from Robert's past. And so together, Robert and I created what was called the prophecy of Mount Rousseau. I shouldn't say I recreated, we lived it. The vision of the prophecy of Mount Rousseau was, from this mountain, peace will go to the entire world. And from this mountain, we will make friends with nature. That's also in this magazine. And so as you think about what miracles have happened in your life, put you in the right place at the right time. Have you ever said, I'm in the right place at the right time? I can look at each of you and you can tell me that you were in the right place at the right time. I can look at Joyce Wyckoff and say, Joyce said, I want to live in Santa Barbara. I got to blow my nose, excuse me. And she got to come to Santa Barbara. And there's so many miracles. Know what you want and let your vision drive you. So my vision from my grandfather and my vision from my heart was I too will be working for peace. So Robert and I wrote journals. Remember when I said it's nice to be in 2 countries? I have journal entries that I'm in archival heaven here. I'm opening the boxes my son pulled out of our storage rooms. I'm opening the files that I wrote and sent to Robert. To my darling Robert, I give you this humble pad. On these pages, you will record your thoughts, your most precious thoughts, and the angels and I will sing as we read your words. Oh, I'm letting in, Pam. I cannot bear to have one of your thoughts about our love not recorded. Oh my, how I love you, my darling. This is the type of pad I write on daily, and I'm giving it to you. You are my inspiration, my partner, my lover, and now my pen pal. And he wrote back, my heavenly darling, I will record on these loving pages all the spontaneous, loving feelings and thoughts which come to me naturally, overwhelming my heart with our wonderful love. I am impelled to do more. Every day I will record my feelings so that you can hear on a tape recorder, so that you can hear my voice and live with me every day of my life when we are far away from each other. This will help our love live forever. Never before have I spoken to an audience with such love. This was written May 21, 1995. For the first time in my life, I broke out into tears at the end of my speech. Why? Because I spoke to you, my heavenly darling. You were in the audience looking at me with such love. This was taking place in Santa Monica. He was asked to speak on the International Day of Peace. And he wrote, and I wrote, and we filled journals after journals with our ideas. We wrote and we rewrote his ideas for a better world. We thought we were only going to have 2,000. Look at all the stickies I have. I never leave a letter without an idea that somebody can. I just open it up. I wish to be a great author, and I wish there was another great author who would write a bestseller, a novel telling how at some time in the 21st century, the human species and many other species became extinct on the planet because we didn't care for our planet Earth. What can we do about it? There's still time. We could get all the necessary information you need to save our world from the UN right now. World reports and many vital documents will show you how we as a humanity can save the earth that we were born into, paradise earth. And with that, one way of helping preserve the earth is use our possessions no longer instead of buying new things. This applies particularly to homes. We are told to sell. I've lived in my home in Santa Barbara since 1969. When I think about moving, no, it's part of me. My DNA is there. My son, he was a little boy, said, "Mom, this is the house we should buy." Now, I didn't think about buying a house, but I was a substitute teacher. And the substitute teacher that was next to me said, "I can't buy the house I put my money down on. Would you like to buy it?" Well, brand new, sticks in the air. And my son said, "Let's go see." He was 4 years old. And we went to that house, and it was in nature. No roads were around. And I love nature. My grandfather, who came from Hungary, had an orchard as big as a park. And he would take me in that orchard, and he would take out his knife, and he would cut an apple or a peach, whatever was in season, and give me a piece. And he'd say, "This is why I came to the United States, so I would have the freedom to grow the fruits and vegetables and not be in a war." So anyway, when I looked around, I said to my son and my husband and my daughter, that was my first marriage, I said, "Well, should we buy this house? It's $25,000. And everybody, when I told them at my school that I was going to buy this house, they said, "You're going to live way out there." That was Goleta then. Long story short, I turned it into, after I started planting, because I love to plant. And I turned it into like a little paradise with fruit trees and places to sit and stuff. Well, in 1994, Robert comes to the Invitational. And he's so precious. All the nuns fall in love with him. And they all go on walks with him, all the participants. But there was one person who he never let go, and that was me. And everybody would say, "Why are you two always together?" And I would say, "It's like we're magic. I don't know. We're like two magnets. I can't separate. He's got something that I love, and we're together." And as I showed him, again, I tell you the story, as I showed him Santa Barbara, and we were in front of Montecito School, the light turned red. And I didn't say a word. Robert said, I said something like, I was a PR lady. "Oh, Robert, you're so great. I just love you." You know how you do, just, oh, what does he say? "And I love you." And in that 3-second window, I knew if I said, "I love you," my life would change. I wouldn't have a white house in Santa Barbara with art on the walls or a white Jaguar. I would be going to Costa Rica, and I knew it. And I was brave enough to say yes. And I said, "I love you, Robert." And we got married. And into this rustic cabin, I took my body and my iPhone and a couple of things. This beautiful rustic cabin surrounded by 300 hectares of land that was primitive. If you go to robertmuller.org and you go to Mount Rasur, there's this tiny little cabin at the foothill of all these mountains. We were in that tiny little cabin, and the mountains were providing the oxygen that we were breathing. And there were times when on my birthday, I would climb Mount Rasur, and my sister would call me. My iPhone worked in Costa Rica too. And my sister would call me and she'd say, "Where are you? It's your birthday. Happy birthday." I said, "I'm climbing Mount Rasur." "You're climbing Mount Rasur? Aren't you afraid of the snakes and the whatever animals?" I said, "No, Lorene, I feel protected." And Lorene's listening, right, Lorene? And she would say, "How can you do that? I don't know. How come you're so brave?" And I would say, I'm not brave. I'm happy. I'm in love. And I love this mountain. And I could see the beauty of Costa Rica. And so many people came to visit us there. Well, it gets old not having an oven, not having hot water. And one day I said, that's it. I've had it. Robert was at the university every day, chancellor of the university. And there's my cabin right behind Sandy. Sandy, move your body over so they can see the beautiful cabin. That's our cabin. That's where we live. Can you imagine? That's our cabin. Do you see our fence was made of sticks and barbed wire? And that was our cabin. And what do you think we had for an awning? Corrugated metal. And that was really good, though. You know why? Because the chickens would lay their eggs in the top of the corrugated metal. And when I heard, I run out and grab the egg and make breakfast because they were afraid the coyotes would eat them. And I said, Robert, the eggs are laid. Let's go. Well, one chicken, she didn't like laying her eggs on the corrugated metal. So she came in and sat in Robert's favorite chair. And there she laid her eggs. And I would say, Robert, you can't come in now. She's laying her egg. Well, tell her to hurry up. I'm ready for breakfast. And I said, well, sit down. I'll bring it out to you. And we would have this new pleasure of eggs in the chair. I should write a story about eggs in the chair. This chicken was so beautiful. Once upon a time, we had this woman come who was kind of a channeler. And she said, this is a very sexy chicken. I'd say, she's so sexy that all the roosters love her. And she comes in and sits in our chair and lays her eggs. Well, that's a good news, she said. That's the good news. So you're hearing me tell the story of the beauty of Costa Rica and our humble little cabin. And then one day I said, that's it. I have got to have hot water. I have got to have a stove. Well, that's immaterial. I was cooking the most delicious meals, and Eleanor's going to be listening to this. And she would come into our home because she was very worldly, and she would travel to Costa Rica and work at the University for Peace and do all the wonderful things she did with the Kittiwasi Indians. And she would come to our house for dinner. And out of my rice cooker, I would create the most incredible meals. And she'd say, how did you cook this? I said, well, I went to the market today and I came home and cooked it. And there was one thing else. They had fresh fish because we were so close to the ocean. And I would buy this package of asparagus sauce that you had to mix up. And I'd cook this fish with this asparagus sauce. And everybody thought I was a gourmet cook. I wasn't a gourmet cook. I just didn't have anything else to cook with. So I would just mix up what I had. And people would think I was amazing. And then we had a chicken coop in the back of the house. And Robert said, we're going to turn that into a cabin. And we're going to invite people here. I said, we're going to invite people to our chicken coop? Oh, yes. And we can put a bed in there and they'll be happy. I said, mm-hmm. Who do you think got to stay there first? My daughter and her husband on their honeymoon in our chicken coop. You will not believe. I would go up there and he would be saying, I don't know if I can sleep in this bed. And I would say, oh, just get used to it. Close your eyes and you have lots of oxygen. You're going to be fine. Well, my daughter was absolutely blown away that Robert could tell them and I could tell them that it's going to be okay. So you're hearing the real story. And when I had enough, I said, that's it. I have got to go. And in Costa Rica, they don't steal your food. They steal your refrigerator because they're poor. And it's not unusual to see a household carrying the clothes and their belongings up and down the roads, freeways, etc. So it was not unusual for them to see somebody carrying a refrigerator. They thought they owned it. And I remember my girlfriend went on a vacation and she came home down the street. We didn't have many close neighbors, but she was about 2 miles away. And she said, they stole my refrigerator. Well, that motivated me to let them leave my front door open and they could steal my refrigerator. Then I'd have to go home. So I left the front door open, took a shower, and came out. And I smelled something incredible, like a hot apple pie or something. And there was nobody in my house. The refrigerator was still there. So then I looked down at the dining room table and there was a hot mango pie. So I sat down, not knowing where it came from, and cut it into quarters and ate a quarter of that pie. And you know what sugar does to you? It makes you think the world is perfect. And so I ate the pie, half of it, the next, and then I called the Radio for Peace, Deborah Schneider. I thought she's the only one that had been promising me a hot mango pie for years. And I said, Deborah, did you bring me that hot mango pie today? You know what she said? I've been going to make you that hot mango pie for 3 years, but my oven never worked. And I fixed the oven yesterday, and you've got the hot mango pie. And I said to her, can I call that a miracle pie? Because that miracle pie helped me stay in Costa Rica. And so she said, call it whatever you want. And I said, it is so delicious. She said, I make it just like an apple pie, but it's made with mangoes. Now, she was the founder of the Radio for Peace in Costa Rica, where I had my Inspiring Conversations program, where I would interview all the visitors who came to the University for Peace. That's where I started interviewing fabulous people. Gallup organization, Ted Turner, you name it, they came. Jane Goodall. Now, not only was I interviewing these heads of states who came to University for Peace, they were coming up on our cabin. And so after I got this energy from the pie, I said, okay, I'm here. I'm going to create Monet gardens. I'm going to put orchids everywhere, and I'm going to have a terrace. So I got our gardeners and I said, let's build a terrace. We built the terrace, and that's where Eleanor's children have renewed their vows. That's where people who had family die, where we celebrated their life. It's where we put people when they were getting married. They would come up our front porch, which was, you saw it, this little humble porch. They'd walk as a marriage ceremony, the bridesmaids and everybody in their humble clothes, and get married on our porch and terrace. So the miracles continued. And I read something today about strong women. Women are strong, and they become stronger by the experiences they have. Think about that. Me in Costa Rica, in this humble cabin, marrying Robert. We were together traveling the world for 17 years. And toward the end of his life, he got a bit of Alzheimer's, and he would stand up in front of a group to make a speech. And he'd be about 3/4 of the way done, and he'd stop. And I just would say, Robert, you can sit down now. I know the rest of the speech. And I'd stand up and finish the speech. And it's because I listened to all those words that he had said to me. This was about his 15th year of our marriage. And I could repeat the words. And because I always was the key ender anyway, because he just piled on the ideas. And at the end, I would say, now, when you go home, don't expect to do all these ideas tomorrow. When you get home, what I'd like you to do is kiss your wife, kiss your family, and tell them you had a nice time. But I don't want you, and there's my little Robert with my Sandy, but I don't want you to tell them you had the best time of your life going to Robert's speech, because they were home doing the things that normal people do. You have to wait for the right time to share what you had from Robert. So there are so many people I can thank as I look around today. And I know I am who I am because of all of you. I know I am who I am because of Robert. And this is a picture taken at Christmas time when Robert and I were celebrating Christmas with the author Douglas Gillies. It's amazing how many people who have been in my life, and I could name you and I could tell you how many of you have changed my life. Not only did Robert make speeches, but we made speeches on, most of all, they taught me happiness. Every time we came to Santa Barbara, we did another workshop on happiness. on the fact that in times of stress and turmoil, do you ever feel that happiness is out of reach? Robert Muller found happiness even when a prisoner in the Nazi prison. His attitude and vision totally saved his life. His book, Most of All, They Taught Me Happiness, was recently republished by my son and his girlfriend to share the adventures and outlook for a new generation. Speaking of Most of All, They Taught Me Happiness, we have just finished Prophet, the Hat Maker's Son. And if you get the book and you read chapter 1, I want you to go on peacepodcast.org to the blog and listen to chapter 1. Douglas Roach, the ambassador from Canada, who wrote the book Safe Passage to the 21st Century with Robert, is introducing Robert. And Douglas Roach would say, "No way can I be Robert, but I can certainly imitate him and bring some of his ideas to life." And then his wife, Barbara Muller, an educator specializing in peaceful alternative solutions to world issues, discuss concrete life experiences and offer simple exercises to invite serenity and enthusiasm into your life. We would do that at the Carpellis Museum, and the audiences would get this renewed joy that they were alive. Sometimes I walk down the hall here and I say, "I'm alive. How am I going to use this day? This is my day." And I'm sure you all do that too. I'm alive, and the joy of being alive. So when Robert would write his ideas, he had 8 ideas that we created for the Club of Budapest. For Irvin Laszlo, we were both members of the Club of Budapest, to make this planet a paradise, to stop destroying nature at all costs, to eradicate from it all poverty, miseries, and errors engendered by power, greed, and egotism, to make all humans one united, cooperating family, to create a new social and political order for the centuries to come, to attain a life of fulfillment and happiness for all humans, to achieve a human family in harmony with earth and the heavens, to be the ultimate cosmic success of the universe and of God who created us. I'm going to pause for a minute because I'd like to hear from Tammy, our harp player. I think it's time for us to just be. And to just be sometimes, Robert, you know, our little humble cabin that you saw a picture of always was filled with classical music. Robert had a record player, and I can remember the hills. I'm walking in the hills and I'd hear this classical music. And there was another trick Robert had. He was always whistling. On the last page of the magazine, you will see Robert walking toward the light. And he was whistling even in his last days. And I knew he was going to die on the eve of the International Day of Peace because he no longer could remember how to play his harmonica. And so I had the hospice come and put him to bed. And I said, "I love you, Robert. I know this might be your last time on the earth, but I'd like you to know that with you, my life has changed." Tammy? when he wrote the book, Most of All, They Taught Me Happiness, and my children republished it, wrote this: to Barbara Gone Muller, my wife, a wonderful model of happiness, and to all our children and grandchildren who represent the possibility of a happy world of peace and love, and for all human brothers and sisters, I must try to be the happiest person on earth, like my Aunt Mart on pages 168 and 169. Get this book and read it. It's going to be our next Peace Book Club. If you don't have Peace Book Club and you have the magazine, you can order this. This is what we need to talk about today. What it is that Robert left with us, and how he never, ever had a book that didn't have a signature in it. Why? Because he said, someday after I'm gone, somebody will be in a garage sale where my book is sitting, and they'll see my signature, and they'll take it home and read it. So he signed all his books because he knew a signature had a beautiful vibration. Sign your books. Sign with love. As Robert played his harmonica, we would play classical music, and he would sign all of his books, even little books that he didn't write. Always Have Dreams. This little book is so full. And he would say, I am not alive today because I am lucky. I am alive because I have work to do. And I always follow my dreams. And this is what he wrote when he moved to Santa Barbara. Keep your belief in yourself and walk into your new journey, Santa Barbara, and you will find it magnificent, spectacular, and beyond your wildest imaginings, as I have found every day since I moved to Santa Barbara. Now, he didn't move to Santa Barbara. We lived in Costa Rica 3 months, Santa Barbara 3 months, the United Nations, New York for 3 months, and 3 months of travel. I never had a moment when I regretted filling up my suitcases, because in those days when we were traveling, they didn't have weight restrictions. They didn't have suitcase limits. I even took a swimming pool to Costa Rica, a blow-up pool in my suitcase. And when I got there, we blew it up and we put it on our terrace and we filled it with Costa Rican pure water. And it sure came in handy when the cleaner ants came. I don't know if you know Costa Rica, but cleaner ants are about 6 inches wide, and that's about 2,000 ants per inch. And they come up the hill and they clean out your house. They take the cockroaches from the corners that are dead. They take the mice under the bed, which may have died. They clean your house. And they clean you too if you're not that careful. So I would jump in the swimming pool and sit there till the cleaner ants had cleaned up everything. And you should see the carcasses that were on my floor. And that's what I lived in. And I would tell our housekeeper, maybe you better wash under the beds. Oh, no, we don't need that part. Well, when the cleaner ants came and they pulled out those beetles that were the size of an orange, I said, you have to clean under the beds. And Robert sometimes would go into the closet and he'd say, something's tickling me. And I say, what's tickling you? Oh, it's a little mouse. But he'd flop it out the door. This was how we lived. But we lived in such love and harmony with the earth that it didn't matter. This little mouse was just trying to be warm. And Robert was just trying to put on his pants. You know, it is what it is. All I can say is have a sense of humor when you're married, right, Jim Halderman? These people who are married, you know what it's like. It's never going to be perfect. And so I would have my moments when I would go back to Santa Barbara with great joy, and Robert would come. And remember I told you about how I created these gardens at home in Santa Barbara? Well, Robert felt at peace there because there was no traffic across the street. There was no homes, just my garden. It looked like Costa Rica with palm trees and fruit trees and chayotes growing. And he was so happy there. But he had one thing he did. He would always clean a mile wherever he was. And I'd see him go get a plastic bag out of my closet, and I knew what he was going to do. He was going to go clean a mile. and he would clean a mile. And when he was going at the United Nations, when he would walk from Poughkeepsie to the train station, he never owned a car. He took the train everywhere. He never read a newspaper. He worked on ideas as Assistant Secretary General. He would give them ideas. He would write in the train. When it was time for Utah, said, we're never going to have never going to have a United Nations that works if we don't have a spiritual voice. So one day in the train, Robert says, well, the Vatican's a part of the United Nations. Let's invite the Pope. And Utah said, you're going to invite the Pope? Okay, go for it. So Robert invited the Pope, and the Pope came. And when Robert was all done, and I have a beautiful LP album of the Pope's visit, and when it was all done, the Pope said to Robert, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm the first spiritual voice that has ever spoken to the General Assembly, and I would like to give you a gift. And Robert said, well, do you have a little cross you could give me? The Pope took off the gold cross that was around his neck and hung it around Robert's neck. And I still have that beautiful cross. If you to go around and find any pictures of Robert, you will find pictures of him with that gold cross. One day when he was at the tour at the end of his life, he got pretty sick. And I went to the emergency room, and they all said, oh, the Pope's here. And I said, no. Well, they said, well, I said, what would you like the Pope to do? We want him to bless us. And I said, well, he's not the Pope, but he can bless you. And he blessed everybody in that emergency room. That was Robert. He would do what was called for in the moment. And as I finish this story, I have an ending I'm going to read after I ask a couple of you to say a few words, because so many of you got to know Robert. Diane, Ruth, Diane, she was there in Peru with Robert when we had just fallen in love. And they would take Robert on these tours because he knew it would attract all these people to go to the tour in Peru. And Diane was there. And she said, all he did was talk about you. He had fallen in love with this beautiful woman in Santa Barbara, and his life was complete. But that's not all he did. Diane can tell you miracles that happened when he was there. He was a miracle producer, but he believed in miracles. He believed in what he knew he had to do. And he always never took no for an answer. He would always just say, I can do that. And so as I look around, I see the David Wicks, who's working with Ambassador Chaudhry for the culture of peace. And we're going to have this event, this 10th of this month, this 10th, which is this Friday. And I hope you'll join us as you'll get to hear some of these amazing people. And so I'm going to ask David Wick to say a couple of words, because David Wick was with Joni and with Avon Madison as they started Pathways to Peace. David?
Well, it's so wonderful to hear your journey with Robert and learn more each time. But his spirit was just a constant. He was just a shining light. And the times that I met him, he just was so gracious and so continually outpouring his love, which is great. And Joni can speak, more directly than I, but Robert was a very important presence in Pathways to Peace and very close with, particularly with Avon. And to talk about him and we engage with him. But his presence was very much a part of the evolution of the consciousness that has been birthed through Pathways. And I love that you continue to share this. I mean, I was thinking about this experience now and with the book, and it's so beautiful that you keep him alive in a way that otherwise would not be. So I thank you very much. I just want to, Joni, any of your thoughts, Joni?
Oh my gosh, what a treat to reminisce about all the wonderful things that you shared, Barbara. Thank you, thank you. And, I always reminisce on the time that you two were smooching in the back seat of my car during the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. Such a treat to be with you two in your early romance. And I was there at the conference where you met. So that was very, very special too. And Robert was the patron saint of Pathways to Peace. That's what Avon called him. And he indeed was. And he worked with us on the United People's Assembly and all the other United Nations groups that we created with Lucille and Lola, and who we all just adored him. And I think the highlight for me, as I said in the chat, was visiting you in Costa Rica and with my friend Jack, who Barbara noticed that he was fascinated with me. And the next thing you know, we got married. So Barbara was the first one who noticed that we had a spark between us. And we had many wonderful visits in Santa Barbara with you too. And I remember when Robert was being silly towards the end of his life as he started to fade his brilliance, but his sense of humor never went away. And I have a picture of him with onion rings on his eyes. He was so amazing. Thank you for bringing so much of this to light to the world. And I've been loving reading the book again.
Thank you. And this, most of all, they taught me happiness is going to begin in April, the very first Sunday in April. And we're going to do 3 chapters at a time. And Sandy and I will take you through the first one. But it's true. I saw Jack looking at Joni. And what did Joni say? Oh, he likes all women. And I said, pay attention, Joni, because it was Joyce and Don George who said to me, pay attention, Barbara. Robert really loves you. And I said, okay. And I noticed he really did do things like hold my hand, like open the door, like smile all the time. I think there was another thing we had in common. We're both good smilers. We like to smile. And not only do we like to smile, but there's a philosophy behind the smile. I just read in a woman's magazine, it was the worst day of my life. Everything went wrong. And I'm not even going to go through the litany of things that went wrong in her life. And then I read a poem by Robert Muller, and it said, decide to smile. Your subconscious doesn't know that you're not happy. So smile. She said, I did it. And I felt better instantly. At the end of Robert's life, we would do nothing with great enthusiasm because there were times when all we could do was be together and hold hands. And I would say to Robert, I love you, but let's watch this Hallmark movie now. And we would do nothing with enthusiasm. And that gave us time to say goodbye. And I remember one time I was in New York at the United Nations, and we were staying across a street, and I saw Robert's shoes. And no Robert was in the shoes were there, and I just boo-hooed. I said, someday I'm only going to have his shoes and no Robert. And I boo-hooed because I knew, thank you, Sandy, for that beautiful picture. I knew this too would not last forever, but the memories were there. And so with that, I realized that ends do happen. But this is what Robert wrote about his ending. As for myself, when the moment will come to close my eyes on this beautiful planet, my heart will thank and honor all those who gave me life and the warmth of love, and him who permitted me to devote my earthly sojourn to peace, justice, and the betterment of the human condition in one of the most noble organizations ever born from the heart of man. I will go in peace and joy, thankful for having been blessed with the miracle of life. I will have loved my life with passion, embraced it with fervor, cherished every single moment of it, and I will have contemplated with wonder the sky and the running clouds, my brethren and the humans, my sisters, the flowers and the stars. I will have feasted unceasingly on the treasure of life in all the forms. I will not have dwelled on mediocre ambitions, vain hatreds, or useless complaints. I will depart with the belief that there is no end to the flow of life in the universe, that there is no death, only the unceasing change of worlds. So my conclusion would therefore be, decide to be happy, render others happy, proclaim your joy, love passionately your miraculous life. Do not listen to promises. Do not wait for a better world. Be grateful for every moment of life. Switch on and keep on the positive buttons in yourself. Those mark optimism, serenity, confidence, positive thinking, love. Pray and thank God every day. Meditate, smile, laugh, whistle, sing, and dance. Look with fascination at everything. Fill your lungs and hearts with liberty. Be yourself fully and immensely. Act like a king until death. Feel God in your body, heart, and soul, and be convinced of eternal life and resurrection. And so I thank Robert. I thank you for listening today. And I thank Robert for being part of a world that really can work if we listen and remember that we put here at this time because we're what they've been waiting for. The world's been waiting for us. I know that. And with our path, one step at a time, with courage, faith, and determination, and our heads held high, and our dreams put on the bench of dreams, and the peace poles with peace shall prevail on earth, will become firm, and the footing will be solid. And with that, Tammy. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And thank you for the joy of letting me share what it was like to be married to a peacemaker and to carry on his work. We are going to continue the book club the first Sunday in April. Thank you for your hearts and your love. We're going to talk about, most of all, they taught me happiness, because there are so many things in here. And I'll tell you one more thing Robert and I do every single day. When we wake up, we say, every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. And that's in this book from Emil Coué, who said, every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. And there are so many positive people. I look at Diane, who's been through some health challenges, but she believed every day in every way she's getting better. And my Peace podcast, these women and doctors tell me the body can heal if the mind is free to let it know that you want to be healed. And so with that, I thank each of you. Anne Baring, would you have a word to finish our speech today, my talk? Anne Baring described Robert, which helped me fall in love with him when she came to Santa Barbara. And if you don't know Anne Baring, Google Anne Baring. Anne, please.
Well, I remember when I first saw Robert that he just radiated first of all, joy, but also love. He just embraced everyone who came within his aura, I think. And he's with us today. There's no question about it. That dove behind you is really Robert, I think, resting on your shoulder. But he's been a tremendous inspiration for me and for my work. And I remember he said, if you have 80 intuitions a day, follow them all. And I remembered that. It was such wonderful advice. And this feeling of joy just exuded from him and has lasted all these years. I think, I can't remember what, 1994 was it? In Casa de Maria, when I went there, I can't remember the date. And I don't remember how I got there or who invited me, but there I was. And I had a marvelous time. But most of all, I remember the essence of Robert, the pure essence of love. And he understood what life was about, which is about love and breathing the life that's coming through you every day with joy. So I think with those words, thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
There are so many people who thank you for those words, because the joy is what Robert always experienced. Why do you think he played his ode to joy on the harmonica wherever he spoke? Because he knew that if the heart was open, that we would be able to think of new ideas, be creative. And I started to write a book about what it would be like to be in harmony with nature. And I wrote journals that you would not even believe. I couldn't believe I wrote them myself, in the nature of Costa Rica. I didn't need all of the trappings. I just started writing. And I have journals full of ideas that came from Robert. And we would go travel around the world. And I'm just going to read the opening paragraph. What would a public relations company owner, why, give up her 16-year-old business to her employees, move to Costa Rica, live in a 150-year-old wooden cabin high on Mount Rasur, surrounded by forests, 2 cans, no neighbors, no hot water, 44 cows, and 1 husband and 5 geese, a cat, and then sit down and write a book about nature. Because in this quiet solitude away from stores, traffic, and the active, busy lifestyle of business, I discovered what it means to be united with nature. And so I invite you to spend some time in nature, and we will then begin to realize how healing it is for body, mind, and spirit. And with that, I hope you will join me on this treasure on Robert's 100th birthday. Join me on Friday at 10 a.m., 1 o'clock Pacific rather, 3 o'clock in Costa Rica, and 4 o'clock in New York. Thank you.